Set and rep schemes are the backbone of strength training. They represent the minimum amount of complexity needed to have something that you can actually call a training plan. Committing to one particular set and rep scheme tells you about recovery, what training threshold you're going to be in, and what your adaptations are going to look like. It also gives something for the lifter to sink their teeth into. Having committed to one protocol makes training decisions much more straightforward. It gives you a firm launching pad to make changes workout to workout so that each week stacks together successfully to create one cohesive block of training. Now, which reps you choose are going to depend on your immediate goals, in addition to the most recent thing you've adapted to. You certainly want your reps to be specific to your goals, but if you've been doing 1s, 2s, and 3s for the last 10 years because that's the most specific range to your immediate powerlifting goals, well, you're going to be best suited by releasing the white-knuckle death grip on your program and actually allowing yourself to bleed out into other rep ranges. Now, talking about rep specificity, it's long been known that hypertrophy-specific goals are best accomplished using reps in the 8 to 12 range. However, a century of bodybuilding anecdote that pushes back against that, in addition to some recent studies, have shown that anything between 3 and 30 repetitions has the potential to contribute to hypertrophy in pretty even capacity. Given that so many things seem to contribute to growing muscular size, but lower reps are necessary for maximizing strength, it begs the question, what is the best way to arrange training to optimize both muscular size and physical strength? Now that's what this video is for. This is for those who are eager to build both, those who want to acquire galactic levels of mass in order to fuel their planet-destroying strength. I'm going to cover the best set and rep schemes for both size and strength to help you on your mission to becoming a walking human Death Star. The first protocol we have up are pyramids and reverse pyramids. A pyramid traditionally is done starting with a high rep set, usually 10 or 12 reps, and then adding weight each set as you drop the rep count. So it might go 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. That's a very common one. It might feature more sets, starting higher in the rep count and then working up to a heavier weight. It might involve fewer. Something like a 12, 8, 6 counts as a pyramid, but it's a very abbreviated version of it. Similarly, a reverse pyramid uses a wide variety of reps in the same session with the same lift, but just starts completely backwards. You're starting at your heaviest top set, a single, a double, a triple, and then every single set is defined by dropping the weight down and doing a few more reps to compensate. And they have some trade-offs, they have some specific applications. Now, pyramids have kind of a funny role in strength training culture because just about anybody who started working out and who has done a bench press has come across pyramids, have had them recommended to them, and has probably done them. But I was very surprised when I moved away from like bodybuilding magazines as my main influence for training information into competitive strength sports to find that nobody really does them on the strength side of things. I would have thought that this was a more commonly used tactic since it does bleed size and strength training together, but it seems that strength athletes really fall in love with the idea that they should be fresh, they should be as recovered as possible going into their heaviest sets so that there isn't any metabolic fatigue, any buildup of waste products that are actually holding their performance back. I actually like the fact that traditional pyramids start you out with the high rep work because it forces you to adapt to it. It forces you to go into your heaviest work in the context of fatigue, which is hugely important for strongman because I'm almost never fresh when it's time to go in for a max log or a max deadlift. So learning how to express strength in that fatigue state is actually a useful training tool. It's also useful, I think, in actually developing strength because these fatigue touches, you increase your work capacity, you increase your ability to perform, and as you increase those numbers up, the stress builds up. And then when you pull that away, when you actually do go into a dedicated strength block where you are fresh for those initial heavy sets, it's like night and day. And then you hit the second gear of growth where you just start steamrolling again, and it's fantastic. So I don't think it's good to really shy away from that type of work. So what I would generally recommend is somebody utilize traditional pyramids where they're starting with the high rep work when they're coming off, let's say, a lot of hypertrophy work or a lot of dedicated bodybuilding work, and they want to get their toe in the water. They want to remind themselves what force production feels like. And also a power lifter in, let's say, an off season where they do need to focus on size and rounding out weaknesses and building that base, that wide foundation, but getting the heaviest weight on the bar is not a priority. So in that way, it's kind of self-limiting. So it gives strength athletes a break from having to expose themselves to the heaviest possible weights. Traditional pyramids are great for kind of keeping your toe in the water there. On the other end, when you are focused on strength, when that is the main priority, but you still need some volume work, you still need some capacity work to keep things moving forward, reverse pyramids are fantastic. It's basically just working up to a top set, drop the weight a little bit for a few more reps, drop the weight a little bit for a few more reps, and you keep going. Now, you might look at a pyramid on paper and look at the whole spectrum of rep ranges you have in front of you and think that it's a little too tricky to try to find the exact appropriate weight for each one and then to move those weights forward over time. So for one, when you're starting a pyramid, it doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, I recommend just biasing towards it being a little too easy on the first week. As you move forward, I recommend increasing only 1 or 2 sets at a time. Don't try to add weight to every set in unison, because you're going to find that recovery is going to be way too damn hard. You're going to burn yourself out quick. You're going to hit a wall quick, and you're not going to know what to do. So if you focus on just increasing your heaviest set a little bit, maybe just increasing the back off set, and maintain those as you focus on increasing the other sets after that. And as you kind of stair step up, it'll be 4, 5, 6 weeks. Eventually you'll see all those numbers up and you can repeat the process. That works very well. For a reverse pyramid, it's auto-regulated, which is nice. And I actually recommend having all of your back off sets be a fixed percentage of whatever that top set is for the day. So that guarantees that whatever you're good for that day, that your back off sets move up accordingly. You can also use this trick, which I've used before, which is to use percentages instead of the rep count and just do a soft Amrap, meaning you leave 1, maybe 2 reps in the tank, rest a few minutes, and then repeat. So instead of doing like a 12, 10, 8, 6, 4, you might do something like a 65, 70, 75, 80, 85% workout where each one is done close to failure, but with a few in the tank so you have something left for those follow-up sets. That is a very easy way to implement the principle of a pyramid without having to get lost in exactly how you figure out what weight goes with what rep count and exactly how you progress that over time. Protocol number 2 is a top set followed by an Amrap set. Now, this is the same theme as something like a pyramid. We're working on different ends of the rep spectrum. So we're getting heavy weight in a top set for a strength-specific stimulus. We're getting lighter weight done with some effort, some intensity on a back off set. That Amrap is going to drive progress for hypertrophy, recruit some more high threshold motor units. The obvious difference here is that we're getting a lot fewer sets in. There's less total volume. So for one, we're going to benefit from using a bit more effort on these, whereas a pyramid, for it to be successful, you're going to want to leave a little bit more in the tank and be really reserved with how you increase weight. With this one, you can let it fly a little bit more. This is a great minimalist approach. It lends itself to higher frequency, which is great if you want to do multiple heavy touches throughout the week. I saw tons of success with this when I was working at a gym. I was 19, 20, 21. And you would think that I would be using that access to just train 5 hours a day. But actually, I was doing the opposite. In between clients, I would go and I would hit a heavy top set of rows, do a back off set, go eat something, and then train my next client. And I would do that throughout the day over a couple of different exercises. So the same exercise was getting done 2 or 3 times per week. I was only doing maybe 3 exercises in a day, and it was very minimalist. It was a heavy top set followed by a back off set. And what I found is that the frequency made up for the lack of volume. I could go harder on each individual day, and that effort was a very useful tool for driving progress, and it worked extremely well for the time I did it. Guys, if I can help fund this channel and help you solve a problem, I call that a win-win. So please allow me one moment to preach the good word of Boost Camp. I tend to get a little complex when I'm writing workout plans. Tracking progress for these programs is hugely important, but options were never great. I would write these long, complex progressions by hand into a notebook, or I would carry a binder filled with spreadsheets I printed off of LiftVault. That's why I'm here to introduce you to Boost Camp. Boost Camp is the easy way to track training progress directly from your phone. Their library of programs features countless dozens of powerlifting and hypertrophy specific programs from your favorite creators, including Jeffrey Verity Schofield, Johnny Candido, Eric Helms, Greg Nuckols, Alberto Nunez, and of course, yours truly. Boost Camp also has exclusive programs that you just won't find anywhere else. Select the one best suited to your needs and watch the sets, reps, weights, and exercises populate automatically. Don't guess at that one weight you lifted that one time for how many reps again? Have your log of training with you at all times for easy reference in the convenience of your phone. Not only does Boostcamp have a stellar product, but their support is the only reason this channel exists. So thank you, the viewer, and thank you to Boostcamp. Check it out today. The link is in the description. Now, I don't recommend doing something like that indefinitely. Eventually, I benefited a lot from going back to volume work, but in the context of abbreviated workouts, or if you want your main lift to take up a less substantial chunk of your training day, you can do something like this for the main lift, so you have more effort to give to variations that are going to round you out and prevent weaknesses, or to isolation work if you are focused on building mass in other areas, again for weakness development, or if you just want to focus on aesthetics. That's actually viable. I would recommend a lot of bodybuilding people who have been ignoring strength work use this template as your primary strength work, because it takes no time whatsoever and it starts off your workout in really great fashion. It primes your nervous system by starting with that heaviest weight, and then you can essentially just go back to your bodybuilding workout right after this, no worse for wear. So you get the benefit of all of that volume, all of that hypertrophy, but you still get the neurological adaptation, and you start to get better at this lift. Now, I would hesitate to tell stronger lifters, if you consider yourself intermediate at all, to do the top set and progress linearly multiple times in 1 week. So if you're doing a top triple, don't do that on Monday and Thursday and think that every single time you come in, every Monday and Thursday, you're gonna add weight. It's not gonna go down that way. You're gonna fatigue really quickly. I would offset this with either a different exercise, a variation. The very neurological stimulus will allow you to work harder without burning out, or to use it with a volume day, or to use it with a lighter recovery day. You have a lot of options, but you want to offset the work with something that involves a really heavy top set, because you're not likely to be able to stack that together with other workouts with only a few days in between. So this is best, I would say, once a week for most of you. Newer lifters could do it potentially a couple of times per week, but be warned that eventually you are going to hit that wall. So when you get stronger, be ready to pivot to something that allows a little bit more recovery. Now, if you want a really easy way to make this sustainable for just about everybody, I wrote about this a lot in Base Strength. I give a ton of training ideas for how to work these types of progressions in that book, so check it out if you haven't. But going through a 3-week wave, one of the easiest ways to make really heavy stuff sustainable long term. So you could do something like a 5-3-1 wave. Week 1, top 5. Week 2, top 3. Week 3, top single. And then after that, you either reset or maybe even deload and repeat the cycle a little bit heavier. So that change in intensity, that change in weight over the 3 weeks, followed by the deload, allows you to train hard, get that stimulus, but it allows you to recover. That's huge for most lifters. That's the big deficit in a lot of lifters' training programs. This is also really good for deadlifts. A lot of these protocols that have more total sets that fatigue you quite a bit, like pyramids, a little bit tricky to pull off with deadlifts, but this one, because it's only 2 sets, top set, back off set, I've applied this to deadlifts with a lot of success as well. So it's a very versatile tool. Protocol number 3 is the Hexagon. Again, varied rep ranges, just structured a little differently. Now, don't go Googling this, because you're not going to find this referred to as a hexagon by anybody anywhere, because I just made it up. However, I have seen this protocol in a few different ebooks. I've used something similar myself. This is kind of a standard, what you might consider power building type template. You got heavy top set for strength work. You got some static repeating sets where the same weight is done for multiple sets of medium to high reps for some volume. And then you have that back off, that really intense, get into the weeds, get into the pain cave, high rep back off Amrap. It's very productive for driving effort in the program. So I call it a hexagon because if you turn a hexagon on its side, you got the point, and then you got the thick part in the middle, and then you got the point at the bottom. So that makes sense to me just from a geometry kind of synesthesia standpoint. Now, I like this for a few reasons. One is just the symmetry, heavy top set, few sets across, all out back off set. So it's some submax volume work in the middle, sandwiched between some more intense work at the top and the bottom. And the way it's structured, everything you do is not made worse by the thing that came before it. It's similar to a reverse pyramid. The set of, let's say 8, if you're doing 3 sets of 8 as the work in the middle, that's not going to be made worse by a top triple or a top set of 5 for your top set. The AMRAP you do at the end is not going to be made worse by the repeating sets of 8 you did in the middle. So as you progress through the work, you're going to find that you just improve your performance, which is pretty cool. It's also a lot easier to progress this. You could do it in an auto-regulated fashion where whatever top set you hit, you have fixed percentages for what your volume work and your AMRAP's going to be at the end. Or you could just focus on increasing one variable at a time. Maybe increase your top set, but keep the volume work the same. Maybe increase your volume work, but keep the top set and back off set the same. There's a lot of options here, but it's really easy to keep this fixed to the wall and make little movements forward one at a time. So it also doesn't demand a lot of variability. You can stick with the same protocol for a long time and just make little movements forward until you feel like a deload or a reset is warranted. Now, again, I prefer to do something like this on a fixed timeline where I'm going to be knowing exactly what my top set is, how long I'm going to progress at, and then just resetting the whole thing. Again, going back to the 3-week wave, I think that's a great opportunity to do this. You don't have to do the 5-3-1 like I laid out. You could do something like a few weeks of fives, a few weeks of threes, a few weeks of singles, and just increasing the effort over each week and then waving back and forth that way. Something like a top 3 into 3 sets of 8 into a back off set of like 12 or more. Really, really great, simple protocol to utilize, and it's going to cover all of your bases. Now, which exercises you use for this, it's going to affect how you put the whole program together. For something like squats, this is going to be very taxing, heavy, plus volume, plus AMRAP. That's a lot of work, even if it doesn't look like a lot on paper. So you're going to be a bit limited going into secondary movements. So don't bank on doing like a bunch of hard-ass pause squats after this, or a bunch of heavy-ass box squats. This is going to be the lion's share of your work. You're probably going to be able to fit in some isolation work, or maybe if you're doing whole body stuff, you could obviously do some pressing after this and be okay. I also wouldn't really recommend this for deads. The repeating sets of medium rep volume work, the 6s and 8s you might do for sets across in the middle, that's going to be very taxing. It's going to make the AMRAP very hard at the end. You're not going to be doing much of anything else after that. So you want to make sure that you're keeping a handle on how this affects your recovery. For pressing, this is very easy. Pressing, overhead benching, you can do this with a whole ton of work afterward to be absolutely fine. This probably 1 time per week. If you want more frequency, again, offset this with some lighter work so that you can recover. Yeah, I'm a big fan of this for just checking a lot of boxes and being really easy to progress. The next protocol we have is the 5-end dime. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I read about this in a Muscle and Fitness like 25 years ago. This was billed as kind of an old school routine. I don't know specifically if any one particular old school like silver era or golden era lifter made this popular, or if it's just a mishmash of like 5s for sets across, therefore it's old school. Bottom line is you're doing repeating sets of 5 for your medium range strength work. Remember, 5's are really good for being just right in the middle, hunkered down between pure strength work and pure volume work. I know Mark Rippetoe is a meme for pushing 5's, but they do exactly what he claims they do. Again, we know 3 to 30 reps, depending on how you put the program together, they're going to have pretty similar capacities to increase hypertrophy. However, the lower rep ranges are needed. They're necessary for strength. So the lower the reps, the more strength, but we can also utilize these for size. So 5's, they do what they claim. So doing your 5's, getting the benefit of that middle range work, and then going into 10s for some really serious aggressive volume, that is a great way to slap some meat on your frame. Now, a couple of things. One, this is a lot of work. This is 10 sets of work. Now, I wouldn't recommend doing the exact same weight for all the 5's and the exact same weight for all the 10s. You could potentially do that, but I recommend giving yourself a huge head start, being way back on the RPE, and giving yourself a lot of weeks to build up until those sets start to become really substantial. However, I think most people are better off doing a ramping approach, building the weight up over time, and just doing 1, maybe 2 or 3 sets at the same weight, and even potentially backing off, maybe building up to a 5 and backing off. So all 5 sets are varied. I think that's a better way to do it, more sustainable way to do it, and similarly for the 10s. Now, even if you do vary the weight and keep it more manageable, it's still a lot of work. It's still going to kill you the first time you do it. This is going to be most of what you do that day. You might be able to follow up lower body work with some isolation in the form of like hamstring curls or something. But again, doing this and then going into any amount of compound work, that's something a seasoned bodybuilder might do, somebody who's used to a lot of volume, who's not really fazed by the work. However, the mix of reps for the compound movement, you're getting a ton of total reps, so skill acquisition is going to be very high. This is going to guarantee in something like squats and presses that you feel like a machine that is just made to do that thing. I absolutely don't recommend doing this for deadlifts unless it's some lighter variation like a Romanian deadlift and it's literally like the only thing you're doing that day. For you garage gym warrior guys, this might be viable for you if you have a barbell and little else. You just want to do one exercise. You want to get all of your workout in that one exercise and not worry about anything else. You can apply this to those movements and know that all of your bases are going to be covered. So for most of the better known developmental movements, any squatting variation, any pressing variation, even rowing variations, I'm having a hard time imagining anybody gluing themselves to this protocol, overloading progressively for weeks on end, finding some type of growth, some type of improvement in the numbers, and then not just being completely physically transformed. These thresholds, the amount of work, the number of sets, the effort you're going to put into it paired with the volume, I mean, this is going to be a recipe for growth, provided you are eating what you're supposed to be eating. All of these things, I don't know if I pointed out because mass is in the title, I think it goes without saying that all of these things you should be in some caloric surplus. Do not do any of these on a cut and expect good results, because the extra volume, the higher reps, they're going to be wasted on you. You might get some neurological benefit from the heavy stuff. You don't want to do all of the higher reps, all of the volume that causes all of the muscle damage that you have to recover from when you are restricted in your caloric intake. So keep that in mind. Up next, we have plus sets. Anybody who has followed my videos, read my books, or gotten coaching from me knows I absolutely love plus sets. These pop up all over the place. Juggernaut uses them. The Grayscale LP uses them. 531 uses them. It's essentially doing your main work as prescribed, with the last set having the option to go to an Amrap. So it's a baked in way of guaranteeing that you're going to get a lot of effort put out, a lot of intensity on at least one set throughout the workout. So what that allows you to do is structure the rest of your work as submaximal volume. Because it's submaximal, you know that even on your worst day, even if you don't get stronger from the last workout, you can meet the prescribed amount of work. It's light, it's easy, it's skill work, it's token volume. It's just there's a placeholder, a baseline amount of work that you can mathematically manipulate over the weeks. That last set, the plus set, gives you that hit of effort that causes the growth. It also gives you kind of a cool rabbit to chase. Having the immediate gratification of knowing that even on this workout where you were kind of reserved and just hitting your numbers, you still could chase a PR in something. You could still try to beat yourself from last week without causing this detrimental effect to your training that you have to recover from. It's absolutely fantastic. It's one of the reasons I really like the Grayscale LP over starting strength. You do a traditional LP, you're starting at your 5s, and week 1, it's super easy. Week 2, it's super easy. It's easy for months, and that's by design because you're trying to get the movement down. However, by not exploiting any effort, by not utilizing effort at any point during those weeks, you're really missing out on some developmental work. So I really like it as a way for newbies to push themselves without really causing issues. You're not throwing a bunch of load on them. You're just getting them used to working hard. That works really well. I use this all the time for myself. It's just such a nice way of balancing volume with effort. I really like plus sets. Now, how you implement this is going to be different based on how advanced you are. Novices will be able to do just a simple linear progression. Just start out, add 5 pounds every week, try to beat your AMRAP number each successive training session. Even though you have a little more weight, you're going to find that in no time at all, you're beating week's 1 AMRAP with more weight on the bar. And that's a really cool feeling. The only difference is stronger lifters aren't going to be able to do it quite as long, and you're probably going to be better off having more time in between those all-out AMRAPs. You're not going to want to test your squat in an AMRAP with the same or similar weight 2 or 3 times per week if you are a stronger lifter. So that's where you would look at using this like once per week, maybe having it as 1 leg in a DUP split. Again, that other day is either maybe more strength specific, or that other day is maybe a more aggressive volume work. There's a lot of options you have, but DUP is a really good way of kind of spreading out the work, getting some recovery. You can also use this as part of a wave. I've used that with a lot of success, where you use something like, let's say 5x5 at a relatively light percentage 1 week, 3x5 plus at a medium percentage the next week, and then 1 set of 5 or more at a heavy percentage week 3, wash, rinse, repeat. Again, a lot of these strategies are in base strength. There's too many to put out here. Next up, we have Boris Sheiko. Now, I pulled these out. I cherry picked these because he's known for using pyramids, just building up and building back down, and he manipulates the volume by having you do, say, more sets at any given percentage on the way up or the way down. He'll have you do a full pyramid up and down where it just feels like you're repeating your warm-up sets, but that contributes to the volume. So on a smaller week, he might just pull out the back off work. So the heavy work is still there, but a lot of the fluff is missing. but everything really hinges on taking your time, building up, coming back down. Now, Sheiko is not specifically a hypertrophy focused coach. He's a powerlifting coach, and he uses a lot of Olympic lifting principles, so everything is based around skill work. However, he's become a master at utilizing skill work, keeping the effort back, utilizing all of these submax touches in order to get the athletes to grow predictably. And he does that by manipulating the math. On weeks where you do a lot more work, that's a bigger trigger for growth. You're going to grow more, but you're going to be more fatigued. So he offsets that with weeks and workouts where there is less total work. And he is one of the most decorated coaches in the field. Now, I particularly pulled out 2 methods he uses, and these actually aren't staples of his. He uses these to like interrupt training when he thinks the athlete has to be pulled back from the regular monotony of the workload. So this is kind of a way to jumble it up, but I think any of you could use this with really good results. He uses a pyramid of increases, in which case he keeps the same percentage, in this example 70%, and he jumbles the reps, but he has you increase them over time. So the pyramid of increases 70% for a set of 3, 5, 7, 9, then back down to 8, 6, and 4. So it's a lot of sets. Most of them are sub-max, but building up, doing those sets before the heavy set, it messes with your psychology. It messes with the way you approach the workout. You're going to be surprised at how the fatigue builds up from the early sets that are kind of easy but still contribute to fatigue. But also that's offset by the increased skill you get. Those early touches make you more efficient. So it's this weird trade-off there. He also uses the ragged method. And I really like this because it throws a curveball at you. Same idea, stay at 1%, but you're getting whiplash from the high and low rep sets. So 70% for a set of 3, into a set of 7, into a set of 5, into a set of 4, into a set of 9. And it just jumbles back and forth. So I think this is a really interesting way to expose yourself to skill work, get more touches. Even though this is not a strength specific range for many of you, this skill work is going to absolutely carry over to how efficient you are at a 1 rep max. And I like these psychological curveballs. These really do just require something else. You have to be on your toes because the sets just feels so different to go from a set of 3 into a set of 9, even if it's with the same weight, and then to bounce back and forth. So this is a really unique tool by one of the greatest powerlifting coaches to have ever done it. Last protocol we have is Vince Gironda's 6x6. Now, I don't know that Vince Gironda invented this, but he was a big proponent of it. And we've seen this protocol pop up in the training programs of some of the strongest men in history, especially in the 1980s and earlier. Doug Young is a perfect example. You can look at his training templates and you see a lot of 6x6s in some of his workouts. Now, I've said for a long time, and anybody that's read through or ran Bull Mastiff knows this, that 6s are the enlightened lifters' 5s. So 5x5 is good, 6x6 just must be better. The rep threshold is very similar to 5s. It's not so big that it's even worth really recognizing the difference. Obviously, a little bit more work, and there's going to be slightly less weight on the bar. But if 6x6 just looks like a lot more work than a 5x5, that's because it is. I mean, 1 more rep on each set and 1 more set, that is a lot more total work, and you are going to feel that. However, the percentages are going to be pretty comparable to what you would run in a 5x5, and that's kind of the beauty of it. So by doing all of these repeating sets, more so than the average trainee might be inclined to do if they were just winging it, you are forcing yourself to handle these medium strength hypertrophy range percentages, and as you adapt to that, you're going to grow mass, you're going to get stronger. And I'm reminded of the wisdom of some of the strongest, densest lifters around. I remember Konstantinov's talking about how he never did pump work, he never did high rep work. All of his accessory stuff was based around 6 reps, even less than that. So if we're considering that that's the cap, we're going to focus on 6 reps or less as being as high as we're willing to go because we want to optimize strength, then doing a lot of volume is a great way of building muscle density. You're going to get a lot more contractile proteins laid down, and that's going to make sure that the mass you do build is useful, it's functional, and it's used to move as much weight as possible. Now, I think this one really does shine for some of the secondary work. You could certainly use it for a squat or for a press. I would probably hesitate to use this on a deadlift, but secondary developmental exercises, things like Romanian deadlifts would be absolutely great, as well as good mornings, dips, any rowing variation you can think of. Even direct arm work would probably do very well with this type of protocol. So for that reason, I think it would also do well as a secondary protocol. So you do your main work for your main lift first, following it up with a 6x6. That's actually what we saw in Doug Young's program. You saw a lot of sixes, repeating sixes, making up his secondary and tertiary exercises. So I think that is a fantastic way to implement this. You could progress this linearly, where you use the same weight and you just add a bit of weight each workout. You could also do a dynamic double progression, where you are chasing a rep cap, and once you hit it, then you add weight and repeat. There's a lot of ways to implement this, but bottom line, our sixes, the Enlightened Lifters fives, great method of combining size and strength into one easy protocol, and it sure is just a shit ton of work. So that's all I got for today, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know in the comments, have you ran this before? What'd you think about it? Which one of these do you think is best suited to your goals right now? Let us know in the comments. Also, take that to Patreon. Comment on Patreon. Contribute to that community. It is growing. I got a lot of good questions there. We do form checks regularly. I get video ideas from there. I interact with the community there. I give life advice. We do it all. So check out Patreon if you want to get in contact with me. Thank you so much, guys. Until next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.